1 week ago, I was a free woman. Today, I'm fighting to prove I'm sane, because I said no to a wedding. I say those words aloud for the first time as I sit on an air mattress in my best friend's apartment, staring at the single slice of toast I haven't touched. My hands still shake sometimes, not from fear, not anymore, from rage maybe, disbelief. Flashback. It was a Friday. My father invited me over for what he called a family celebration. No details, just a text from his assistant. Typical. The Morgan estate hadn't changed. Same iron gates, same white columns, same feeling of walking into a museum where you aren't allowed to touch anything. Lucas Carter was there. I should have known. He always was, hovering around family functions like a ghost of some future I never agreed to. We went to the same private schools, summer camps, even a brief, awkward trial relationship in college that lasted exactly 1 week and ended with him saying, "You'll come around eventually." We were seated around the dining table when my father stood, wine glass in hand. He looked at me, not warm, not proud, just composed. "To the future Mr. and Mrs. Carter," he said. I laughed. I thought it was a joke. But no one else did. Lucas was smiling. My father sat down as if the matter was settled. "Dad," I said slowly, "what are you talking about?" "This partnership solidifies the future of both our families," he replied, not even looking at me. "You'll be engaged by the end of the month, married before year's end." I stared at him, then at Lucas. I didn't agree to this. "You don't need to," my father said. "You're 30, Emily. This is the right move." "I'm 28, I snapped, "and I'm not marrying someone because you made a business deal." That was when the air shifted. My father's face hardened, voice sharpening like ice. "You've always been difficult, ungrateful. This is what's best for you. I don't want this." My voice didn't rise. It didn't tremble. It was just final. He stood up and left the table. 3 days later, 2 men in plain clothes showed up at my apartment with paperwork. My father had filed a petition for involuntary psychiatric evaluation. Grounds: emotional instability, self-harming ideation, delusional behavior. None of it true. All of it signed by a private physician. On his payroll. I was given 10 minutes to pack. I wasn't allowed to call anyone. They told my landlord I was having a breakdown. My friend Lena didn't even know I was gone until days later. At the hospital, they took everything. My phone, my laptop, even my notebook. They gave me white socks and a bracelet with my name and a number. I asked when I'd see a lawyer. They told me I was here for my own good. In the hallway mirror, I didn't recognize myself. On the 3rd night, when the lights dimmed and the nurses changed shifts, I pulled the small voice recorder from the lining of my shoe. I had planted it the moment I felt something was off at that dinner. I hid it behind the radiator in my room, because I knew I wasn't crazy. This isn't about marriage, it's about control, and control is everything he's ever wanted. My father wasn't always a monster. He was just calculated, cold, strategic, a man who believed love was earned through performance, and loyalty was bought through silence. Growing up in the Morgan household meant 2 things: keep your voice down and your image polished. Our house was the kind with matching marble staircases and portraits no one ever smiled in. The kind where appearances mattered more than people. My mother, Claire, used to soften the sharp edges of it all. She'd sneak me books under the dinner table, whisper encouragement when I said I wanted to make films. "Stories matter, Em," she'd say, "especially the ones no one wants told." She was sunlight in a house built from stone, but she got sick when I was 13. Cancer. It was fast. By the time I turned 15, she was gone. And with her, so was any softness left in my father. After that, he became efficient. Dinners turned into boardroom meetings. Grief turned into silence. He stopped asking how I was and started asking who I talked to, what I wore, what I posted. My feelings weren't dangerous, just inconvenient. He started bringing Lucas Carter around, more often. Lucas was the son of his longtime business partner, polite, preppy, painfully dull. But my father adored him. Lucas knew how to nod at the right times, how to talk stocks at 16, how to stay in the lines. I was 17 when he first mentioned the idea casually. "You and Lucas would make a strong pair one day," he said over breakfast. "Your strengths balance each other. It's a strategic fit." I thought he was kidding. I laughed. He didn't. When I told him I wanted to study film at NYU, he said, "Don't waste your potential on something so frivolous." When I got accepted, he cut off my allowance. When I left home at 21, he didn't say goodbye, and yet, he never fully let go. Every few months, a check would appear in my mailbox with no note. Then emails. "Your birthday's coming up. Come home." Or, "I heard about your documentary festival. Proud of you. Let's talk." I never replied. I didn't need his approval anymore, but I still underestimated him. It wasn't until I was inside the facility, with my wrists stamped and my name reduced to a case number, that I started to understand just how deep the control went. Joanna, the woman in room 4B, had a mind like a scalpel, sharp, precise. She saw through things quickly. On my second day, she said, "You're not here because you lost your mind. You're here because you didn't lose control when they wanted you to." She wasn't wrong. I started piecing things together. My father's business had been hemorrhaging money for the past year. Real estate deals fell through, investors pulled out. His reputation was slipping, fast. Lucas's father had the capital. The Carter family had the connections. But they wanted guarantees. Mergers weren't enough. They wanted legacy. So my father offered them the only legacy he had left. Me. The engagement wasn't romantic. It wasn't personal. It was a transaction. I was the dowry. And when I refused, when I derailed their perfect little arrangement, he used the only tool he had left: institutionalization. A formal declaration that I was unstable, that I couldn't make decisions for myself, he thought. That would scare me into submission. But the thing is, once you've seen your name on a patient file you didn't write, heard your own sanity questioned like gossip, and watched the people who raised you weaponize your past against your freedom, there's a shift. Something snaps. It wasn't just betrayal, it was a business deal, and I was the asset. The hallway lights in the facility always flickered, as if even the electricity was unsure about being there. Day 3, and I had learned the schedule by heart. Wake up at 6, pills at 6:30, group therapy at 7. Everything in that place had a rhythm designed to scrub away your resistance. Dr. Linton met with me every morning. Her office smelled like antiseptic and rose water, a mix that gave me a headache the moment I stepped in. She never looked rushed or angry. That made her more dangerous. "You say you don't want to marry Lucas," she said in our second session, folding her hands over a leather-bound notebook. "But can we explore whether that's fear-based? Sometimes control phobia stems from unresolved trauma." I smiled. "Or maybe I just don't like him." She didn't laugh. "You're deflecting," she said, scribbling. "Let's try to stay open to insight." The sessions were always like that, calm, clinical gaslighting dressed in faux empathy. She never raised her voice. She never questioned the paperwork. To her, I wasn't a woman with a boundary. I was a broken product to be fixed. On day 5, I met Joanna Rivera, room 4B. She had a scar on her temple and eyes that didn't blink much. She was reading The Art of War and tapping her nails against the plastic table when I sat down across from her in the common room. I didn't introduce myself. She didn't either. After a minute, she said, "You look too calm for someone they say is delusional." "I'm tired," I said. "They always call the loud ones crazy. The quiet ones, dangerous." She smirked. "Which one are you?" I didn't answer. Later that night, she knocked once on my door, pushed it open, and sat down without permission. "They told me I had psychotic delusions," she said. "Turns out the senator I accused was just politically inconvenient. Know what made them nervous? I had receipts." I sat up straighter. She leaned in. "You got receipts, Emily?" I pulled the tiny voice recorder from inside my pillowcase. Her bomb. Grin was slow. Good girl. Joanna taught me how to fake stability. Smile in group. Say the buzzwords they like. I feel safe now. I understand my triggers. Never challenge authority, even when they lie. Especially when they lie. Compliance is camouflage, she whispered one day in the cafeteria. Let them think they're winning. I took her advice. I stopped arguing with Dr. Linton. I started nodding, mirroring. I even asked for a coloring book in art therapy. And slowly, they stopped watching me so closely. That's when Riley noticed me. She was a night nurse, quiet, serious, kind eyes. One night, as she changed my bedsheets, she said, almost in a whisper, Ms. Morgan, you taught a weekend docu-film course at Emerson, right? I blinked. Yeah, years ago. I was in it. You told me my voice mattered. I didn't say anything for a second. Then I held up the recorder. Just a flash. Her eyes widened, but she didn't flinch. I can get it out, she said, voice low. One file at a time, but be careful. They scan everything. From then on, we had a system. I'd record every therapy session, every hallway whisper, every order barked by staff when they thought no one was listening. And then there was the moment. It was a Tuesday. Dr. Linton was wearing a navy blue suit and pearls, speaking slowly, like I was a child. Emily, your father just wants you to be well, she said gently. You should stop resisting. Click. The recorder was running. That sentence became the cornerstone of everything. Not, he wants you safe, not, he's worried about you, but he wants you to be well enough to obey, well enough to disappear. But I was done. Being quiet, and room 4B, it wasn't quiet either. It was where I found my voice. They called it a care plan review, but it felt like a corporate negotiation. Dr. Linton sat behind her polished desk, flanked by 2 independent evaluators. Both paid consultants, no doubt. She slid a folder across the table toward me. On top was a document labeled Discharge Proposal, Conditional Release. Inside, a non-disclosure agreement, a behavioral compliance form, and a letter drafted by my father's lawyer. You've made wonderful progress, she said, all sugar and teeth. And your father is willing to authorize an early release, provided you sign this. It simply states that you agreed to respect the privacy of the family and acknowledge your time here as a mutual health concern. I skimmed it, legalese wrapped in barbed wire. In exchange for walking out of this place, I'd be erasing the last 2 weeks from existence. I'd be gagged, controlled. Again. And if I refuse? I asked. Her smile didn't budge. Then we continue treatment, indefinitely, if necessary. It was never about my well-being. It was about cleaning up the mess, covering the cracks before anyone saw inside. I nodded slowly. I'll sign, but I want time to consider the language, and I want my personal effects back, including my voice recorder. I used it for reflection, like you encouraged. Dr. Linton hesitated. The device was confiscated for safety reasons. Then release the files to me, I said. Voice even. If I'm leaving, I'd like to leave whole. She gave me that practiced look, the kind therapists use when they're calculating risk. I'll speak to your father, she said. That night, I found Riley in the medication room. They're going to release me, I whispered. Riley didn't. Smile. On his terms? I nodded. I just need the last batch of files, please. By now, we had it down to an art. She slid a USB drive into my palm during vitals check. It was warm, like it had a pulse. I put everything you flagged, she whispered. Therapy sessions, hallway audio, even the nurse who said, just keep her sedated until the paperwork clears. It's all there. I clenched the drive in my fist. Thank you. She touched my shoulder. You're not crazy, Emily. You're dangerous to the wrong people. There's a difference. I walked out of the institution 2 days later. No fanfare, no hugs. Just a folder in one hand, a duffel bag in the other, and a hollow ache in my chest that I didn't know how to name. Outside, the sun felt too bright, too real. I'd been breathing recycled air for so long, even freedom felt artificial. A black, town car waited at the curb. My father wasn't in it, of course not. But a man in a suit held the door open for me. I got in without a word. As we pulled away from the gates, I reached into my bag and felt for the USB. They thought they were giving me silence. What they really gave me was a microphone. They called it a care plan review, but it felt like a corporate negotiation. Dr. Linton sat behind her polished desk, flanked by two independent evaluators, both paid consultants, no doubt. She slid a folder across the table toward me. On top was a document labeled Discharge Proposal, Conditional Release. Inside, a non-disclosure agreement, a behavioral compliance form, and a letter drafted by my father's lawyer. "You've made wonderful progress," she said, all sugar and teeth. "And your father is willing to authorize an early release, provided you sign this. It simply states that you agree to respect the privacy of the family and acknowledge your time here as a mutual health concern." I skimmed it, legalese wrapped in barbed wire. In exchange for walking out of this place, I'd be erasing the last 2 weeks from existence. I'd be gagged, controlled, again. "And if I refuse?" I asked. Her smile didn't budge. "Then we continue treatment, indefinitely if necessary." It was never about my well-being. It was about cleaning up the mess, covering the cracks before anyone saw inside. I nodded slowly. "I'll sign, but I want time to consider the language, and I want my personal effects back, including my voice recorder. I used it for reflection, like you encouraged." Dr. Linton hesitated. "The device was confiscated for safety reasons." "Then release the files to me," I said. Voice even. "If I'm leaving, I'd like to leave whole." She gave me that practiced look, the kind therapists use when they're calculating risk. "I'll speak to your father," she said. That night, I found Riley in the medication room. "They're going to release me," I whispered. Riley didn't smile. "On his terms?" I nodded. "I just need the last batch of files, please." By now, we had it down to an art. She slid a USB drive into my palm during vitals check. It was warm, like it had a pulse. "I put everything you flagged," she whispered. "Therapy sessions, hallway audio, even the nurse who said, just keep her sedated until the paperwork clears. It's all there." I clenched the drive in my fist. "Thank you," she touched my shoulder. "You're not crazy, Emily. You're dangerous to the wrong people. There's a difference." I walked out of the institution 2 days later. No fanfare, no hugs. Just a folder in one hand, a duffel bag in the other, and a hollow ache in my chest that I didn't know how to name. Outside, the sun felt too bright, too real. I'd been breathing recycled air for so long, even freedom felt artificial. A black town car waited at the curb. My father wasn't in it, of course not. But a man in a suit held the door open for me. I got in without a word. As we pulled away from the gates, I reached into my bag and felt for the USB. They thought they were giving me silence. What they really gave me was a microphone. Richard Morgan doesn't blink on camera. He sat beside Lucas Carter in a tailored gray suit on a national morning show, his hands folded, voice calm, and mouth full of carefully rehearsed half-truths. The anchor tossed softballs. He hit every one with precision. "My daughter is a brilliant young woman," he said, "but she's been under a great deal of emotional strain. This podcast, while painful, is an exaggerated portrayal. Our family only ever acted out of concern." Lucas chimed in with practiced sympathy. "We've all been trying to support Emily the best way we know how." They looked like heroes, stern, composed, paternal. The men trying to save a hysterical woman from herself. I didn't watch it live. I didn't have to. The clips were everywhere within the hour. The comment section split between support and doubt. "She's just angry. She's dramatizing it." There's always two sides. I released episode 4 that night. It opened with a clip. Richard's voice, calm and measured, in a recorded conversation with Dr. Linton. "We need her quiet, not cured." Then silence. Then me. "That's not care. That's control. That's what this has always been about." I laid it all bare. The NDA, The false diagnosis, the manipulation, the silencing. I followed it with Joanna's voice describing being sedated for 3 days because she asked too many questions. Then Nurse Riley reading a memo from admin. Patients from high-profile families must be managed discreetly. By morning, the internet was roaring. Major outlets picked up the story. Terms like coercive psychiatry and institutional gaslighting were trending. Journalists dug deeper. Other women, and 2 men, came forward. Different names, same hospital, same patterns. Richard issued a statement calling it a coordinated smear campaign. But his polished empire began to crack. Lawsuits were filed. A congressional inquiry was launched into the facility's funding and licensing. Lucas's family moved faster. Carter Holdings publicly withdrew from all joint ventures with Morgan Real Estate. Their legal counsel stated without subtlety that we do not condone coercion or mental health abuse for personal gain. The partnership collapsed in a week. Richard disappeared from public view. I should have felt triumphant. But all I felt was tired. Like someone had cut the strings holding me up and now my body was just air and motion. That night, I got another message from Joanna. A voice note. They built their power on silence. You cracked it wide open. She was right. Control looks untouchable. Until you pull the thread? And Richard Morgan? His crown was always made of paper. It just took a spark to watch it burn. The room was full, not just of people, but of attention. Real attention. No one on their phones. No one is checking their watches. Just rows of faces watching me as I stepped up to the podium at the National Mental Health Advocacy Conference. In DC, the stage lights felt warmer than the ones in the facility. There, the light was clinical, blinding. Here, it felt almost human. I looked out over the crowd, took a breath, and began. They tried to lock me away for saying no. What they didn't expect was that I'd hit a record. There was a pause, a hush, and then a murmur of recognition. Some people already knew the story. Others were hearing it for the first time. I spoke for 17 minutes, not just about what happened to me, but about what happens to so many. How control dresses up like concern, how silence is sold as peace, how women, especially, are labeled unwell when we refuse to be manageable. I spoke for Joanna, for Riley, for every anonymous message I received from listeners who said me too, even if they whispered it to themselves. The podcast had passed 12 million downloads by then. It wasn't just a story, it had become a reckoning. I ended with one final line. They wrote me off. So I rewrote everything. The room stood before I even stepped down. I didn't expect applause. I wasn't chasing validation. I just wanted the truth. Outside, the air was crisp. Someone handed me a coffee I didn't ask for. A college student ran up to say she'd changed her major because of my story. Someone else cried. Someone else simply nodded. And I walked through it all. Not as a patient, not as a problem, not as a case file, but as a woman who refused to be erased.